I had this experience when I was 16, and I haven't really told anyone about it. I've tried forgetting it, but it's been haunting me lately, so I felt I needed to get it out of my system. Mrs. Thompson hadn't left her house for the past 5 years. She used to be an active member at our local church for decades, and had even played the organ for the choir. However, a combination of old age and declining health had made her a shut-in. All I knew of her life was that her seemingly hundreds of cats were her only company. Every week, my mom brought Mrs. Thompson her groceries, but other than that, she appeared to have no outside contact. I'll never forget the week my mom went out of town. She had some family business to attend to, and since she wouldn't be able to buy and deliver Mrs. Thompson's groceries that week, she delegated the task to me. She gave me a copy of Mrs. Thompson's house key, saying, "Mrs. Thompson gave me this key. She said if she ever doesn't answer the door, to go ahead and unlock the door and come in, because she might have fallen and be in need of help." The weekend came around, and I drove the groceries to Mrs. Thompson's house at the time my mom usually delivered them. Her front porch was covered in vines, and the paint was flaking off of it. I thought I felt one of the steps start to give way under my foot. I rang the doorbell. After waiting a few seconds, there was no answer. Well, she's old, I thought. It probably takes her a while to get to the door. A couple more seconds passed, and I rang the doorbell again. Still no answer. I peered into the window at the side of the door, doing my best to look through the lace curtain. I saw no sign of Mrs. Thompson inside. All I saw were a bunch of cats, some of which were curled up, relaxing, and others of which were prowling about like they owned the place. I really didn't want to go into Mrs. Thompson's house, but she wasn't answering the doorbell. I thought of just leaving and coming back another time, but I remembered what my mom had said. I pulled the key she had given me out of my pocket and unlocked the door. As I stepped inside, a foul odor hit me, full force, in the face. Why does it smell so rancid in here? I wondered. Then I saw the answer. The floor was littered with cat feces. Gross, I thought. Mrs. Thompson really should hire a professional cleaning service. "Mrs. Thompson," I called out, "I've brought your groceries." There was no answer. I walked forward carefully, trying to avoid stepping in the cat crap. A loud yelp from out of nowhere startled me and almost made me drop the groceries. The source of the noise, I soon saw, was one of the cats. I had stepped on its tail. The cat swiped its claws at my right ankle, and I half-heartedly kicked it to the side. It flattened its ears and hissed at me, contempt growing in its yellow eyes. I moved from the foyer into the living room. Mrs. Thompson wasn't there either. Just a bunch of cats lounging on the sofa. Their claws had shredded up the upholstery. Tufts of cat hair were piling up everywhere. "Mrs. Thompson," I called out again. No answer. It felt kind of uncomfortable to just be wandering around her house like this, but I was really starting to get worried. I went into the kitchen. Once again, there was no Mrs. Thompson, only cats, and a lot of cat hair. Some of the hair was even clinging to the cat turds on the floor, making them look like weird little hamsters. I had become accustomed to the smell of the house by now, but this grossed me out all over again. Mrs. Thompson definitely needs a professional cleaner, and to get rid of some of these cats, I thought. "Mrs. Thompson," I called, a lot less confidently than before. There was no answer from Mrs. Thompson, but all the cats turned to look at me. I had what felt like hundreds of pairs of glowing yellow eyes suddenly fixed on me, and to be honest, I was a bit spooked. The only thing to do was leave the kitchen without rousing the cat's attention any further. I cautiously made my way to the door, avoiding the cat turds and the carcasses of chipmunks, no doubt brought in by the cats. I noticed some old rags bunched up in a corner, and I couldn't help but to peer into them. It turned out to be the nest of a mother cat nursing kittens. She bared her fangs and hissed at me. How did it get to this point? I wondered. They must be semi-feral by now. I made it out of the kitchen. The only part of the house I hadn't checked for Mrs. Thompson was upstairs. As much as I wanted to just get the heck out of there, I knew I couldn't forgive myself if something bad happened and I failed to help her. I looked up the stairs and saw only darkness at the top, with a few pairs of glowing cat eyes. Sighing, I started walking up the stairs. Once I made it to the landing, I felt the wall until I found a light switch and flicked it on. There were more cats than I thought. The light made them scurry around like cockroaches. There was an open door to my left that showed the bathroom. The only other door was the closed one at the end of the hall. That must be Mrs. Thompson's bedroom, I reasoned. As I walked down the hall, I felt a cat scratch my leg. I was sure it had broken the skin, but I couldn't attend to that now. I knocked on the door. "Mrs. Thompson," I asked, "are you in there? I brought your groceries." I heard no answer. I was unsure of what to do for a moment, but then I slowly opened the door. In the bedroom were of course dozens of cats, some lounging on the bed or burrowed into the piles of laundry. Mrs. Thompson was sitting in her rocking chair, looking out the window. "Hello, Mrs. Thompson," I said. She gave no indication that she heard me. I drew closer to her. "I've brought your groceries." There was still no response. Finally, I got to where I was standing right behind her and tapped her firmly on the shoulder. That got her attention. She turned her head towards me. I will never be able to unsee what I saw then. Mrs. Thompson had no face. The outer layer, her skin, was gone. All that was left was the quivering red tendons underneath. She didn't even have eyeballs, only empty sockets. She reached out her bony, old hand and touched my forearm. I screamed like I have never screamed in my life. All the cats began hissing and yowling. I ran out of the bedroom door and tore down the stairs, stepping on several cats on the way. I ran out the front door and slammed it hard behind me. I was trembling all the way home. I got to my house and slammed and locked the door behind me. Later that night, I talked to my mom on the phone. When she asked me how Mrs. Thompson was, I just said, "Oh, she's fine." I couldn't bring myself to describe what I had seen. I'm not quite sure, but I think it must have been the next week when my mom told me they had found Mrs. Thompson, dead in her home. "They must not have known that she died for a while," said my mom. "Because get this, when they found her body, they said her cats had eaten her face." I hate cats. Hey everyone, Dismal Hero here. Thanks for checking out the video, and if you like what you saw, make sure to subscribe so you're always up to date with my new videos. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.